But Senator, you know that waste, fraud, and abuse is one of the oldest phrases in the political playbook. The difficulty is when you get from the generalities of spending cuts to the specifics of actual programs like Social Security, Medicare, student loans. Are you saying every one of those programs is on the table?
You really have to look at everything. So many of the people who go to Washington or who are in Washington will say, oh, we're going to roll back discretionary spending to pre-Obama levels. Well, yeah, right. That'll balance the budget in about 100 years.
An honest and good point from our old friend, now Senator-elect Rand Paul. Yeah, right, he says, that'll balance the budget in about a century. This is the first big test, the first big can the media handle this test of our new post-election American politics. First thing out of the gate with this new Republican Congress, we're running right up against a factual brick wall, okay? Here's the problem.
We're going to balance the budget.
What we really need to do is balance the budget. I will be one who will say to the Republicans in my party, we need to stay the course, and we do need to go ahead and balance our budget. And balance the budget. Balance the budget.
No more spending money we don't have.
We will also get right to work to reduce the deficit.
People are concerned about the debt. They don't understand why, if we as individuals have to balance our own family budget, why the government shouldn't have to balance their budget. And that's really what they're concerned about. The government's just spending money that we don't have.
I am convinced that this is a test. This is a test of whether we as a country can communicate rational and factual information. With all of the resources we devote to covering politics, to covering Washington, to the horse race of who's winning and who's losing, with everything we spend purportedly to try to understand what's going on in Washington politics, can we explain and understand that the first thing being proposed by the new Republican majority in Washington is that we should tackle heart disease by cooking up a passel of deep-fried cheese, that we should tackle the deficit by adding $700 billion to the deficit. That is what they want to do first thing.
What's the most important issue you'd like to make H.R. 1?
Let's extend those tax cuts.
Let's
make certain that's the number one goal.
Okay.
They want to see these tax cuts extended. They want the spending stopped. They want the deficit and the debt addressed.
That is the eat fried cheese for your heart health plan. To address the deficit, they want to add $700 billion to the deficit. Whether or not you care about the deficit, whether or not you care about the deficit and the debt, whether or not you care about this as a policy issue, this is worth caring about, if only because you care about your country. Because if we cannot be counted on to understand that adding $700 billion to something is not making that thing smaller, then honestly, it doesn't matter what you think about the deficit, all hope is lost. If you extend those tax cuts for the richest people in the country, if you cut rich people's taxes like Marsha Blackburn and all the Republicans are proposing, $700 billion that would have otherwise been mailed to Washington in envelopes by rich people does not get there. So Washington has $700 billion fewer dollars, which means we have to borrow $700 billion more dollars unless we cut spending by that much too, which Republicans do not plan on doing.
But do you agree that tax cuts cannot be paid for?
Without a help.
But tax cuts are not paid for. Is that correct?
I am not for raising taxes on the American people in a soft economy.
That's not the question,
and the
Leader
people
Boehner.
that
The
the
question
president
is,
wants to tax.
Are tax cuts paid for or not?
Listen, what you're trying to do is get into this Washington game, and they're funny accounting over there.
The funny accounting may be funny, but it is actually accounting. It is a real thing. This is empirical world. If you add $700 billion to the deficit to pay for tax cuts for rich people, then you just added $700 billion to that deficit thing, which is not a way of making that deficit thing smaller. Thing plus $700 billion does not equal smaller thing. The announced first major policy initiative of the new Republican House of Representatives is to add $700 billion to the deficit by extending the Bush tax cuts for the richest people in the country. They are trying to get away with saying that this will reduce the deficit, not increase it. They are not telling the truth. I think we are all capable of understanding that. I think even with the media we've got, we are capable as a country of understanding that a fried cheese diet is not a means of preventing heart attacks. And adding $700 billion to a thing does not make a thing smaller. So why is the White House signaling that they might be willing to go along with the Republicans on this instead of killing the Republicans on this? Gail Collins joins us for the interview next.